What would you do if strange, glowing-eyed creatures surrounded your home, peeking through your windows and scratching at your walls? Sounds like the stuff of nightmares, right? For one Kentucky family, this wasn't a dream. It was very much a reality. In the summer of 1955, what began as a quiet evening for the Sutton family turned into a tale of horror, something the world still discusses to this day. UFO enthusiasts called it proof of extraterrestrial beings in our universe. Skeptics brushed it off as a case of mass hysteria and paranoia. But no matter where you stand, the Hopkinsville Goblin case remains one of the most interesting stories in UFO folklore. In this episode, we'll unpack this bizarre event in lots of detail: the sightings, the siege, the investigation, and the possible theories. Was this a genuine alien encounter, or something even stranger? But before we jump in, the details in this video are disturbing and may not be suitable for all audiences, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. As always, remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications to stay up to date with the channel. Alright, let's dive into the video. In the year of 1955, the small town of Hopkinsville, Kentucky, was like many others in rural America. A quiet, close-knit community surrounded by rolling hills, farmland, and woodlands. It was a place where people knew their neighbors. Life moved at a slower pace, and the biggest concerns were the summer heat and tending to the crops. But for some, the place is downright terrifying paranormal and supernatural events. One of the oldest is the hillbilly beast, a Bigfoot-like entity said to stalk various areas of the woodland. And then there's the Pope Lick creature, also known as the fish-evil goatman, which haunts a local railway bridge and is often heard imitating a child's voice calling out to passers-by. The creature acts distressed with its voice before trapping the passerby, who goes missing afterwards. But no myth could compare to what this one family was about to witness. A few miles outside of town, in a small area known as Kelly, there was a modest farmhouse. It belonged to the Sutton family, a close family, like their neighbors, led a simple but content life. On the evening of August 21st, 1955, the Suttons were hosting a guest named Billy Ray Taylor, a friend who had come to visit with his wife. The group had spent most of the day chatting and relaxing, enjoying each other's company. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the peace of the evening would soon be destroyed by an event no one could explain. A while later, the entire family had burst into a local police station, shouting and panicking that their home had been attacked by aliens. The officer on duty reacted with shock and disbelief, but little did he know that what he was now dealing with would become one of the most famous and well-documented cases of extraterrestrial creatures on record. And it was not just one person who had witnessed the event. The creatures had been seen by 11 people, 8 adults, and 3 children. Earlier that evening, Billy Ray Taylor exited the farmhouse where he was staying with friends and made his way over to the well some 100 yards distant. Billy Ray and his wife, June, were visiting friends for the weekend on a much-needed break from work. The house itself belonged to Glennie Langford, who lived there with her 3 younger children. However, Glennie's older sons from another marriage, Alma Lucky Sutton and John Charlie Sutton, were the ones Billy Ray knew best. They were there too, along with their wives, Vera and Aileen. Aileen's brother, Opie Baker, had also joined the group for supper. In total, there were 11 people. At one point in the evening, the air had become heavy with heat and humidity. When Glennie said that they had run out of water, Billy Ray volunteered to fetch some. As he walked towards the end of the property, he had been looking around before something caught his attention. He suddenly caught sight of a round metallic object in the skies above the property with a colorful tail streak behind it. It was like nothing he had ever seen before. There were no wings or distinct features, and it even made no sound, silently coming down. It disappeared behind some trees about half a mile away from Billy, and soon he heard a dull thud, possibly due to the object crashing on the ground. Billy ran back to the farmhouse with the bucket and told the others that he had just seen a spaceship. There was a moment of silence before the room burst into laughter. Everyone in the group thought that this was definitely just another prank Billy Ray and Lucky sometimes played on one another. But Billy Ray wasn't laughing. Instead, he seemed very disturbed by what he had just seen outside. As soon as his friends realized he wasn't joking, they tried to reason and explain to him that maybe he had seen a meteor or a shooting star. Knowing he had not seen it wrong and unwilling to let it go, Billy Ray insisted that Lucky come with him to the well so he could point out exactly where the spaceship had crashed and see if there was any smoke or other evidence of something out there. The two men spent 10 minutes checking for any signs of the aircraft in the skyline. It was hard to see anything as it had gotten very dark with no lights around them, but there were no signs of smoke anywhere to be seen. Lucky didn't know what to make of his friend's story, but it was clear he had seen something that was shocking and horrifying. It did not seem like a silly prank anymore. As they made their way back to the house, the sound of a branch suddenly caught their attention. Somewhere out in the tree line, they spotted a dull glow low to the ground, moving towards them. It wasn't bright enough to be a flashlight, possibly a lantern, but there was no definition to it. They watched as it moved closer, and only as it got to within 20 feet of them did they realize something was terribly wrong. What they appeared to be looking at was a small humanoid figure, with short, decaying legs and long, thin arms. Its most noticeable feature was its large, saucer-like eyes that glowed in the darkness. Not only that, the creature had large, pointed ears. And the most disturbing thing of all, the creature looked as if it were floating rather than walking towards them. As they realized what they had just seen, the two men yelled out of fear, then ran into the house, slamming the door behind them. Glennie rushed out into the hall and wanted to know what was going on. Lucky explained there was something strange in the woods and that everyone should stay inside. Unsurprisingly, Glennie didn't believe a word of it, assuming it was part of a prank. However, she didn't want the children being scared at this hour, so she sent them off to bed. Shortly afterward, Lucky grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 hunting rifle, handing the latter to Billy Ray. He instructed Billy Ray to watch the back door while he watched the front. Glennie was just thinking to herself that this joke had gone too far when she suddenly spotted a small figure standing at the rear of the house. Her terrified scream alerted Billy, who immediately started to fire at the creature. But then something even more shocking happened. The bullet appeared to strike the strange being, which moved backwards with a metallic rattling sound before disappearing into the trees. It looked as if it were immune to bullets and was not affected at all. Then he stepped outside to find the creature. Unable to see in the dark, he shot a bullet towards the roof where had seen a hand. As the bullet hit, another of the creatures fell from the roof, making the same metallic rattle. It then ran into the woods, and once again it looked as if it were unhurt from the bullet. Once everyone was back inside, Lucky grabbed his 20-gauge shotgun and joined the others. No one could figure out who or what these creatures were, but it was clear there were several of them, and bullets didn't seem to harm them. As the group discussed what they were facing, Glennie, who was very religious and superstitious, wondered if they could be demons sent by the devil. Lucky suggested they might be the cave goblins people in the area sometimes talked about. Billy Ray believed it had something to do with the strange object he'd seen earlier that evening. Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the children's bedroom. The kids, who had been told to stay put, came running, saying they had seen a strange face with glowing eyes peering through the window. Lucky asked his mother to take the children to a room in the back, and Lucky went with them. Minutes later, there was another scream when one of the faces appeared at the back window. Then, Lucky fired his shotgun, shattering the glass. However, that did not help them much. For the next 2 hours, the family was terrorized. They heard continuous scratching on the roof and saw the faces at the windows. When they looked outside, they spotted the creatures moving around the yard or sitting in the trees near the house. The beings never tried to enter but seemed very interested in the children. The family estimated there were 3 or 4 creatures in total and fired over 100 shots. Around 11:30 p.m., there was no sign of the aliens. Thinking the creatures might have left, the family got into 2 trucks and drove to the police station in Hopkinsville. The group didn't seem like the type to make up stories or play games and appeared genuinely terrified. One of the men who even had medical training showed signs of fear. Even Billy Ray Taylor's pulse was measured at 140, which is about twice the normal rate. Regardless of what authorities believed, a report of multiple intruders harassing a home and resisting gunfire for hours was alarming and warranted attention. 16 police officers from the area, including 4 military policemen, immediately gathered at the house to investigate. Despite it being late at night, they were joined by a reporter, a photographer, and his wife, and 2 curious members of the public. After reaching the farmhouse, the officers found clear signs of a chaotic night. Before we continue on, if you are enjoying the story so far, please hit the like button. And if you don't like it, let me know down in the comments. Your support truly means everything. Alright, back to the video. Bullet holes riddled the walls and windows, and the family's account of the creatures was consistent and detailed. There were no footprints and no signs of anyone. The police searched the area until around 2 a.m., but there was no physical evidence of the creatures themselves. However, the officers did notice a strange luminous glow in the grass near the woods, where Billy Ray claimed the UFO had landed. By the end of the investigation, the police had no answers. And while the police couldn't confirm the presence of the so-called goblins, they couldn't entirely dismiss the Sutton story either. By about 2:15 a.m., everyone except the family had left, promising to return in the morning. The family decided to try to get some rest. However, at around 3:30 a.m., the creatures returned. Miss Langford awoke to see a figure silently staring at her through the window. Its large, glowing eyes were fixed on her, and its claws pressed against the glass. Startled, she looked away briefly, and then back again to make sure she wasn't imagining it. The figure was still there. She quietly called out to the rest of the family to tell them about the creatures coming back. Some sources claim that at this point, the family fled to Indiana to escape the terror. However, this was a misunderstanding possibly spread by neighbors. While a few men did travel to Indiana the next morning, it was for unrelated reasons. One of the men, Billy, had gone hunting for animals, but normal animals, and not the mysterious creatures. The following day, officers returned to the house to continue their investigation. One even climbed onto the roof to look for footprints or other evidence. Despite their efforts, no physical traces of the creatures were found beyond the family's consistent accounts. News of the encounter spread quickly, with reporters picking up the story. However, as the story circulated, it became increasingly exaggerated and fictionalized, sometimes intentionally, and other times unintentionally. For example, the Evansville Courier referred to the intruders as "little green men," a term that gained popularity back in the time. In fact, the creatures were never described as green by any of the witnesses. Instead, they were said to have a metallic silver appearance. As the story spread, thousands of curious people began showing up at the house to investigate the property and surrounding area. Many people had started to treat it as if it were just a carnival, with the public treating the concerning incident as more of a joke than a serious matter. As days passed, the family grew very annoyed and frustrated with the attention and did not want to comment further or engage with the public or reporters. While some visitors showed genuine interest, the family was often mocked, ridiculed, and disrespected. Some people even gathered for picnics on the property, while others walked straight into the house uninvited to look around. The family, particularly Lucky Sutton, tried to shoo people away, but their efforts were often ignored. Even when no trespassing signs were put up and police intervened, visitors continued to invade their privacy. After the family had had enough, they began charging admission fees, which naturally led to accusations that they had fabricated the entire incident to make money. Eventually, however, the public interest faded, and the excitement died down. People then stopped visiting the farmhouse, and as for the creatures, they were never seen again. Over the years, countless theories have been proposed to explain the Hopkinsville Goblin case. Many are conflicted over the sightings. Psychologists Rodney Schmaltz and Scott Lilienfeld point to this event as an example of pseudoscience and a chance to teach critical thinking. Questions were raised about whether the young men were exaggerating, possibly due to alcohol abuse, While newspaper reports at the time stated there was no drinking involved, some people believe that alcohol was involved in this case. A ufologist named Isabel Davis was strongly impressed by Mrs. Langford, a serious and no-nonsense woman who disliked attention and had no reason to lie, and so she noted that none of the witnesses had a history of making outrageous claims. One neighbor claimed to have seen lights around 7:45 p.m., but assumed they were flashlights and didn't investigate further. Some researchers have pointed out that the investigation at the time was not conducted as thoroughly as it could have been. For example, no real effort was made to preserve any footprints that might have been left behind. This means potential evidence may have been missed or destroyed during the investigation itself. While this is an important point, there's little that can be done about it now, 70 years later. One popular theory is that the Suttons mistook a group of great horned owls for aliens. Joe Nickel, a skeptic and member of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, believes the family could have mistaken these creatures for the great horned owls in the area, as these owls are active at night, fly quietly, have glowing yellow eyes, and can be very protective of their nests. Joe also said that meteor sightings were reported in the area Billy had said he'd seen the ship in, which could mean he mistook a meteor for a ship. Author Brian Dunning said that the supposed size of the creatures was about 2 feet tall, which is the same height of great horned owls, which supported the idea that the family may have encountered these birds rather than something extraterrestrial. There are many problems with the owl hypothesis. Firstly, owls certainly do not glow in the moonlight. They blend in very well with their environment. Secondly, owls are certainly not bulletproof. It is possible that the men missed every single shot, even the ones they took at point-blank range with a shotgun, and that's why the creatures got away each time, leaving no evidence of any owl presence. However, that doesn't explain the metallic dings they claim to have heard when the shots hit, nor the strange backward somersaults the creatures were said to have done after being struck. Some of the witnesses mentioned that they weren't sure about the facial features because they were distracted by the eyes. It is possible that this hauntingly distracting feature, combined with the terror they were feeling, prevented them from properly identifying the creatures as owls. But these were true Kentucky country folk living near the woods on a farm in the 1950s. How likely is it that they did not consider it could have been an owl and were not able to identify one after collectively observing the creatures for 4 or 5 hours? It was not only dark either. At 8 p.m. in August in Kentucky, it is dusk, not the dead of night. Furthermore, it was mentioned that the creatures approached the house with the porch lights on, though they did apparently avoid the light. Flying would explain how the creatures floated around, but they were never said to have taken off into the sky with their wings stretched out like an owl would. Instead, they appeared to run like a land creature. Owls can run, but it's rather awkward. Would they really charge a much larger human on foot if they had the chance to swoop down on them from above? Who knows? Maybe some of these strange behaviors were caused by the dog injuring the owls in self-defense, thus restricting their ability to fly. But that still doesn't explain everything. What's even more surprising is that even after so long, the families have maintained very consistent stories. One person named Jerome Clark mentioned the observation of Billy Ray, saying he saw a glowing patch on a fence and a green light in the woods. He revealed that this possible glowing light could be explained by foxfire, a glowing fungus on decaying wood. Jerome Clark claimed investigations by police, Air Force officers, and civilian UFO researchers found no evidence of a hoax. However, Brian Dunning spoke against this, stating there was no proof Air Force investigators visited and that the military police present were from an Army base. Some compared the creatures to gremlins, leading to their nickname, the Hopkinsville Goblins. Ufologist Alan Hendry highlighted the case's length and multiple witnesses, though Project Blue Book dismissed it as a hoax without further explanation. The Hopkinsville Goblin case remains a mystery. Was it a real extraterrestrial encounter? A case of mistaken theories? Or something we can't even begin to comprehend? Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, one thing is certain: the truth is still out there. So, What do you think? Could the Suttons have encountered visitors from another world? Or is there a simpler explanation? Let me hear your theories down in the comments. If you have a topic suggestion, please send it to the email in the description. And as always, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And remember, the only thing scarier than these stories is missing out on our next video.